The pre-dawn air at base camp was brittle, tasting of frost and deferred warnings. Mara tightened the straps of her harness, her weathered hands moving with practiced, rhythmic precision. Against the static hiss of a radio barking storm advisories, she checked her carabiners. The forbidden peak of Mount Serrat loomed above, daring her to climb. The initial ascent offered a deceptive, crystalline serenity. Sunlight shattered across the glacier, painting the ancient ice in brilliant shades of turquoise and blinding white. Mara moved upward with fluid grace, the steady crunch of her crampons echoing in the vast silence. Her confidence swelled with every meter gained, pushing away the lingering doubts. But the mountain had its own brutal temperament. By midday, the barometric pressure plummeted. A sudden, violent gust ripped across the ridge, tearing the breath from her lungs. Heavy, charcoal-gray clouds rolled over the jagged summit, swallowing the pale sun in an instant. The serene morning dissolved into a harsh, unforgiving slate of stone and shadow. Pushing through the rising gale, Mara reached blindly for a jagged handhold. Without warning, the brittle slate crumbled beneath her heavy boot. She plunged downward, her stomach dropping as gravity claimed her. Her gloved hand slammed into a narrow crevice, her shoulder socket screaming in agony as she halted her fall, suspended over a terrifying abyss. She dragged herself over the ledge just as the blizzard struck, erasing the world in a blinding whiteout. Visibility shrank to mere inches. Snow lashed against her protective goggles like shattered glass. Disoriented and utterly alone, she noticed the main climbing rope scraping against a razor-sharp rock edge, its vital nylon fibers slowly beginning to fray apart. The cruel alpine night descended rapidly, burying the peak in freezing, impenetrable darkness. The temperature plummeted far below zero, turning the sweat on her skin into icy needles. Crouched in a shallow rock alcove, Mara shivered violently. The crushing weight of isolation pressed down upon her chest. For the first time, true paralyzing doubt crept into her mind. A terrifying crack echoed from the invisible summit, louder than thunder. The mountain itself seemed to fracture. Above her, a massive slab of accumulated snow broke loose from the sheer face. A tidal wave of white death roared down the slope, devouring everything in its path. Mara had only seconds to react before the avalanche reached her. Adrenaline flooded her exhausted veins. She scrambled frantically across the treacherous, icy traverse, her crampons sparking against the bare stone. The roar of the approaching debris was deafening, vibrating through her very bones. She threw herself beneath a deep rock overhang just as tons of suffocating snow and shattered ice violently cascaded past her fragile shelter. Dust settled, leaving an eerie silence. Mara was trapped on a narrow, unstable ledge, cut off from her ascending route. A deep, throbbing pain radiated from her twisted ankle. She pulled out her emergency radio, desperate for contact, but the display remained dark. The cold device was entirely dead, leaving her utterly stranded at 20,000 feet. Hours bled into an agonizing blur of pain and biting frost. Then, gazing down through a brief break in the swirling storm clouds, she saw it, a faint, flickering beacon of unnatural yellowish light far below in the valley, a rescue outpost. It was impossible to reach without extreme risk, but staying on the ledge meant certain freezing death. Committing to the desperate descent, she drove her ice axe deep into the frozen wall to secure her anchor. She wrapped the damaged rope through her belay device and pushed backwards into the void. The wind battered her suspended body as she bounded rapidly down the sheer, slick ice face, racing against her rapidly failing muscular strength. Just meters from the sloping valley floor, a sickening pop vibrated through her harness. The frayed nylon rope finally surrendered to the friction, snapping violently above her head. Mara plummeted through the freezing darkness, free-falling the remaining distance. She crashed heavily into a deep snowbank, the breath exploding from her lungs upon the brutal, bone-jarring impact. The world spun wildly before settling into a hazy, agonizing clarity. Summoning every last ounce of sheer willpower, Mara dragged her broken body through the deep, resistant drifts. Inch by agonizing inch, she crawled toward the glowing yellow window of the emergency cabin. She finally collapsed against the wooden door, banging her frozen fist in desperate triumph. The heavy timber door swung open, wrapping her in sudden, life-saving warmth. Hours later, swathed in thick wool blankets, Mara watched the golden sunrise illuminate the jagged peaks of Mount Serrat. The brutal storm had passed, leaving the mountain magnificent and silent. She looked up at the summit, deeply humbled by the raw, merciless power of nature.